The torching of the Adass Israel synagogue weeks before Hanukkah devastated Melbourne's Jewish community and tore at Australia's cherished social unity. Now, after months of investigation, an answer.
ASIO now assesses the Iranian government directed at least 2 and likely more attacks on Jewish interests in Australia.
It was one of 2 firebombings ASIO has linked to Iran.
These were extraordinary and dangerous acts of aggression orchestrated by a foreign nation on Australian soil. They were attempts to undermine social cohesion and sow discord in our community.
ASIO Director General Mike Burgess informed the government yesterday of Iran's involvement.
Formal assessments such as this one are not done quickly or taken lightly. Our analysts carefully weigh and weight every piece of intelligence. In this case, their conclusions are clear.
DFAT responded immediately by evacuating Australia's diplomatic staff in Tehran to a third country and expelling Iran's ambassador, who in June refused to acknowledge Israel's legitimacy.
I'm just wondering if you also think Israel has a right to exist.
That should be just approved by the people of that land.
He and 3 other diplomatic officers have been ordered to leave within a week. The government is now preparing urgent legislation to list the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, a paramilitary force loyal to and directed by the Supreme Leader, as a terrorist organisation, a move that was backed by the opposition.
The expulsion of the Iranian ambassador from our country and the listing of the IRGC as a terrorist organisation are entirely necessary actions that the coalition has previously called for and supports.
Middle East analysts say the government has made an extremely serious decision, and what's alleged has been one of the most brazen acts of foreign interference on Australian soil since the Cold War.
And it's extraordinarily rare for a foreign state actor to be tied to an attack, directly tied to an attack in Australia.
ASIO boss Mike Burgess said the Iranians used a string of cut-out facilitators or intermediaries to engage Australians to commit crimes against Jewish targets.
Our painstaking investigation uncovered and unpicked the links between the alleged crimes and the commanders in Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC.
The government is understandably emphasising the success of Australia's counterintelligence agency in identifying malicious forces behind these attacks. But it's also facing criticism that it should have moved earlier in recognising the dangers posed by the Iranian regime to the Australian community.
These are welcomed actions by the government, but it shouldn't have taken the months and years it has taken to get to this point.
Senator Claire Chandler led an inquiry into human rights abuses following the death, nearly 3 years ago, of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini after she was arrested for allegedly not wearing the hijab. The committee heard stories of intimidation and harassment by the regime against Australia's Iranian diaspora.
My great fear back then in February 2023, when I first made these recommendations to government, was what we were hearing in terms of foreign interference was just the tip of the iceberg, and there was, in actual fact, a far bigger operation occurring here.
Earlier this year, in his annual threat assessment, Mike Burgess identified the changing nature of international sabotage, warning of a growing crossover between state and non-state actors.
Threats are intersecting, boundaries are blurring. ASIO's more aggressive counter-espionage posture has made it more difficult and expensive for foreign spies to operate in Australia. So they're increasingly using proxies to do their onshore dirty work.
Today, Australia's spy chief provided the example.
The IRGC used a complex web of proxies to hide its involvement. This is the sort of obfuscation and boundary blurring I warned about earlier this year.
Over the past few years, Iran has stood accused of using criminal gangs either directly or indirectly to prosecute targets, particularly in European countries.
But Roger Shanahan does not see a grand strategy by Iran in these kinds of attacks.
We probably won't know whether Australia was targeted specifically or whether Australia just happened to be a target of opportunity.
It's true that no one was injured in these attacks. It is not true that no one was harmed. The Jewish community were harmed, other communities who were blamed were harmed, but simply Australia was attacked and Australia was harmed.
Thank you very much.
I spoke to the Prime Minister a short time ago. Prime Minister, thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Sarah.
Starting with this incident in Victoria, can I first get your reaction to the deaths of 2 Victoria police officers who were killed at a rural property trying to execute a warrant?
Well, this is terrible news, and my heart goes out to the families who are grieving tonight. The men and women who wear blue or wear our uniform take a risk when they go to work each and every day. But this incident is quite horrific, and the whole of the police family will also be grieving at this time. 2 police officers have lost their life. Another has been seriously injured, and police are, of course, continuing to pursue the action in order to bring the perpetrator to justice.
Now, the man who they are looking for is alleged, and obviously this is early days, but is alleged to be what's known as a sovereign citizen, that is, people who want to live outside of Australia's laws. How much of a threat to our way of life do these beliefs pose?
We've seen this incident, and of course these are just allegations that have been made, but we saw tragic loss of life in Queensland as well previously, and I attended the funeral service, which was so sad, of the officers there. We know that the Director General of ASIO has warned about far-right extremism. This is something that has permeated other nations as well. We see it being multiplied in the United States. The fact that this ideology of not seeing themselves being subject to our laws and our society. We've seen people here in Canberra as well put forward those positions who have demonstrated outside the Parliament. And it is of real concern, and ASIO have warned that this threat is very real and that we need to be very vigilant about it.
I want to move to Iran now. ASIO confirmed today in that press conference with you that Iran's Revolutionary Guard was behind at least 2 of the violent anti-Semitic attacks in Australia using criminal proxies. Why would Iran target Australians in this way?
This is a part of, it's an anti-Semitic attack, so it was targeting particularly Jewish Australians, but it was also quite clearly seeking to create fear and terror amongst the Jewish community here in Australia, but also seeking to divide us as well as a society, and it was an act of disruption. ASIO and the AFP have done rather extraordinary work to trace the source of the funding of these criminal elements who've been used as tools of the Iranian regime. And it was very clear, the advice that we received yesterday was very specific as well. They've done great work. There's more work to be done. They've said that at least on 2 occasions, the Lewis Continental Kitchen in Sydney's eastern suburbs, but the Adass Israel Synagogue in Melbourne, that was, both of them are clear with the evidence, but we suspect that there are other occasions as well, and those investigations are ongoing.
Just before we come to the others, I just want to pick you up on that point about funding. So ASIO was able to trace funds going to Australia via cutouts all the way back to Iran. Is that clear from their investigations?
That is very clear, that they were able to find clear evidence going back to individuals as well, and were very specific. They have not generalised about this. They have made sure that they can be certain, because there's a very serious allegation that we have made. We are asserting that Iran chose to support violent action here in Australia. we speak about foreign interference. This is another level. This is foreign action and foreign violence being committed against Australians, funded and using criminal elements here.
And in terms of the individuals in Iran, inside the Revolutionary Guard inside Iran, you actually have the identity of those people who were directing these attacks?
Well, we certainly have the identity of people who were involved offshore as well as onshore, the elements that were used to carry out these attacks.
So at the Iranian end, if you have the names of the individuals involved from the Revolutionary Guard, will you be seeking to sanction those individuals?
We certainly, one of the things that we did, Sarah, was act very quickly. Once we had this confirmation, we had appropriate meetings of our internal processes. We put in place a mechanism as well to ensure that the Australian personnel at the embassy in Tehran were removed because we thought they would be at risk were this to break through the media or through some other form. And then we've acted very quickly by giving notice. They have 7 days to leave. 4 of the personnel, including the ambassador at the Iranian embassy, will continue to engage in other forms as well. We want to make sure that we continue to investigate. One of the things that my government's been very careful on, we've briefed the opposition, I briefed the Victorian and New South Wales Premier prior to the announcement. We also briefed leaders of the Jewish community just prior to the announcement being made. We want to be careful that anything that we say doesn't disrupt the potential for further evidence of perpetrators being involved.
I understand that. And just to be clear about that question, will you be seeking sanctions against individuals in Iran who are behind this?
We'll take whatever action is appropriate.
You just referred to the fact that it was at least these 2 incidents, that is the incident in Bondi and the attack on the Indepth synagogue in Melbourne. Do you know at this stage how many of the other attacks that we've seen in Australia were carried out at the orders of the Revolutionary Guard?
I'm not in a position to give all of that information at this time. Suffice to say that we know there have been incidents which have nothing to do with this, domestic, if you like, acts of anti-Semitism, acts of hatred. The AFP and ASIO will continue to monitor these issues. The ASIO Director General, of course, referred today to his important speech warning of foreign interference in our domestic affairs.
Now, just on the other attacks, I'm not obviously pressing you for details. I understand you don't want to provide those, but would it be fair to say that the majority of the serious anti-Semitic attacks were committed by Iran's Revolutionary Guard?
I don't think that would be fair to say, Sarah, but I don't want to either discount further information when it's appropriate to give that information. One of the things we've been very careful of during all of these incidents is to allow our security agencies who do a fantastic job, as well as the AFP, to do their job. Our job is to support them, and that is what we have been doing.
Does the Iranian Revolutionary Guard still pose a threat to Australians, especially Jewish Australians?
I think the exposure of this so clearly and the strong action we have taken, we need to legislate our anti-terror legislation in order to bring in the Revolutionary Guard. We will do that on the advice that we've received. We also, the expulsion of an ambassador and the closing of our embassy from operations is a very serious step that we have made. And the way that we have declared this so transparently and openly, I think puts very much the Revolutionary Guard of Iran in the spotlight. And one of the things that people who engage in this sort of conduct, they want to do it in the dark. Well, the light is on, and the light is on as to their motivations, and we'll continue to do what we have been doing, working hard to keep Australians safe, whoever they are. But we have, of course, had specific programs of support, increased upgrades for Jewish schools, for synagogues, increased support for the community in order so that people can be kept safe.
But given some of the acts that the Revolutionary Guard have been involved in around the world, kidnapping, attempted murder, targeted assassinations, do you think that you've done enough to make Australia's Jewish community safe from an organisation with so much evil intent?
We'll work each and every day, and I think we have very much taken what action is open to us, but we'll continue to as well. One of the things that I want to happen, Sarah, is I don't want us to shrink in on ourselves. It's really important that Australians be confident and comfortable with expressing who they are. I met with the Australian Union of Jewish Students here just yesterday. I had a wonderful meeting talking about education and policy and about their future. We need for people to feel safe. One of the great things about our country is our multiculturalism, is the fact that people of different faiths, different backgrounds live side by side in neighbourhoods, and overwhelmingly we're enriched by the diversity that is modern Australia.
Now, you've said we know that you've expelled the Iranian ambassador or given him 7 days to leave. Mike Burgess said today that he was not involved in these attacks. Can you confirm he had no knowledge in advance or after the attacks that they had been done at the behest of the Revolutionary Guard?
That is the advice that ASIO have given us, and given the quality and the detail of the advice that we received, the Director General Burgess's comments are I believe, accurate.
ASIO also described the IRGC working with criminals overseas, layers of criminal cutouts are the words he used. Were any of those intermediate criminals, were any of those Australians?
I'm not in a position to answer that. We're aware of at least one significant individual who's an intermediate, but they'll continue to examine the supply chain, if you like, is almost what it is, but is traced right back to the Revolutionary Guard.
So just to be clear, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you quite clearly there. The intermediary, what do we know about the intermediary?
I'm not in a position to identify or comment.
But just talking about those criminals who are the go-between between the Revolutionary Guard and the criminals carrying out those attacks in Australia, are they, wherever they are, still at large?
I'm not in a position to comment on that. Suffice to say that there was overseas involvement in this, as well as obviously domestic involvement of those who carried out these attacks.
Just briefly, the Israeli intelligence service is known to have significantly penetrated Iran. Did any of the intelligence in this operation come from Israeli sources?
The basis of the intelligence and the operation was ASIO here and the work that they have done.
As well as attacks on Jewish and Israeli interests around the world, Iran has also targeted enemies of the regime, especially independent media, and that includes people in the UK, in Europe, around the world, and in Australia. What can you do to protect Iranian dissidents in Australia from the Iranian regime?
What we will continue to do is to work with the agencies. ASIO are very aware of the activities that have occurred, including two Australians of Iranian descent who've been harassed here. They'll continue to engage and to do what we need to do to keep them safe. My job is to give them whatever power they ask for and in consultation with our appropriate committees, including our cabinet. And I've made it very clear that I have confidence in our security agencies and in our police. And today I think it's rather extraordinary the work that they have done. This is a very complex situation that they have worked through, and they have kept the government and our appropriate committees informed at regular intervals about the work that's been taking place.
Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks very much, Sarah.
Jewish community leaders say Iran's role in violent anti-Semitic attacks in Australia was shocking, but also something they had expected to learn. Norman Hermant reports.
It was an attack that shocked Australia and made headlines around the world. Last December, a firebombing destroyed the Adas Israel synagogue in Melbourne. Torah scrolls somehow survived. The Jewish community was shaken.
This is the hardest thing I've seen all day. Indeed, it's probably the hardest thing I've seen since post 7 October.
Executive Council of Australian Jewry President Daniel Aghion looked on, aghast at what he called history repeating itself in Australia.
I'm looking at a Jewish community in Melbourne pulling their sacred scrolls out of the destroyed building, burnt, in the same way that we saw 85 years ago.
Today, Daniel Aghion heard the news the Iranian government was behind the attack on Adas Synagogue and a deli in Sydney last October. ASIO says it's likely Iran directed further attacks as well.
It means that state-sponsored terror has come to Australian soil. It also means that the Jews, and in particular the Australian Jews, are once again the victims.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has long been committed to the destruction of Israel and has been linked to terrorist attacks around the world.
Are you surprised that the government has identified the IRGC as being responsible for these attacks?
It doesn't surprise me to learn of their involvement. This is a modus operandi for the IRGC in continental Europe and the UK. That's a matter of public record. And it was perhaps inevitable that the Australian government was going to find these links and be able to prove them.
In Sydney, the Executive Council of Australian Jewry said the link between Iran and the attack on the Lewis Continental Kitchen in Bondi provided little comfort for the deli's owners.
They're very anxious and they're very shaken up by it all, to know that they were targeted and now targeted by a foreign regime which has a long record of terror attacks and very deadly attacks targeting Jewish people and Jewish communities throughout the world. It's given them no comfort to have this information come to light. It's given them no sense of closure, particularly also because we don't know how many people were involved, whether they're still in the country, whether there's an ongoing risk. So they're very concerned right now, and as will be very many members of the Jewish community.
The community remains highly sensitised. We're jumpy because there's been so many attacks upon the community and the involvement of a foreign government, we start to ask ourselves, well, what's next?
In all, 7 people have been arrested in connection to the attacks in Sydney and Melbourne. It's believed they were hired guns, contracted to strike Jewish targets.
I think it's a feature of the modern world that if you want to engage a criminal to commit an act on foreign soil, there are apps, you can do it by modern technology. It's a lot easier than it ever used to be, and cheaper. And that's a problem that I think the government has to look at, because that's the modern means by which these attacks are being perpetrated.
Alex Rivchin says the links identified today by the Australian government reflect Iran's long history of terror attacks around the world.
The Jewish community acutely understands the depth of the Iranian threat, We've seen them carry out deadly bombings in places like Buenos Aires in years gone by. There have been credible reports for many years suggesting that the Iranian regime will seek to target Jewish communities and communal leaders. So there'll be little surprise, but little comfort as well, because to know now definitively that such a regime with such murderous intent and capabilities was involved in this, it's a terrifying notion.
Late last week, Victoria police charged a second man over the Adas Israel Synagogue arson attack. He'll appear in Melbourne's Magistrates Court tomorrow.